Pidcock. Thank you for joining us today. Now, Charlie, for those of you that don't know, is a sales mastery expert. So what exactly does that mean? What makes one a sales mastery expert, Charlie? Would you introduce yourself for us?
Thanks, Kieran. A sales mastery expert has made a lot of mistakes in their life and has learned from them. I've been fascinated all my life with sales. I remember very clearly finishing university after 4 years and 6 years of high school and getting a job and finding out very, very quickly that I knew very, very little. And, I was lucky to be sent to a sales training course. It was 3 days that changed my life. I couldn't believe it, that you could learn sales skills. So that started a journey for me a long, long time ago now, and it's one that I really, really enjoy. Questions that I get asked most or elicits the most inquiry for me is, why do people buy? And Zig Ziglar says it beautifully when he says, people buy off people they like, know, and trust. So the number one tip for me today is that the first part about like, know, trust is you have to get somebody to like you. And I call that emotional connection or engagement. My view is that like, know, trust fits no matter what you're trying to sell. So we've got to emotionally connect with our potential buyers, or we won't move from like to know, and we certainly won't move from know to trust. So number one tip is emotionally connect. Be patient with that, be persistent with that, and be curious about leading yourself and your client or potential client to that.
Yeah. So what's tip number 2, Charlie?
Yeah, tip number 2 is, and this is an interesting one. When I go into businesses, I can tell very quickly by the language that they use about whether they're product peddlers or solution providers. So I get asked a lot by businesses, how can we improve margin? And we've just got to look at building value, because I don't believe building value, but also believing in the value that your product or services offer has. And that comes with some belief in oneself and your ability to do it as well. So I've often said that there's no room left on the moral high ground when it comes to price. The reality is, if you want to fight on price, there's always someone that can do it cheaper. And they might not have the level of quality or customer service that you do, but there'll be someone who can do it cheaper. So you've got to build value into it. And I really like the quote by Benjamin Franklin. He says, the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. And the reality is, nobody wants to pay more than they have to for anything. Neither do I. And there's a game that goes on inside all of us, because we're almost challenged to do so by what goes on about asking for low prices. It's on the television all the time. But there is there is no truer saying than you get what you pay for. Yeah. And things are cheap because they're.
And what is tip number 3?
Number 3 comes from a story about 12 or 18 months ago when I was I pitched to a business, and they said they'd be making a decision within a month, which turned into 2, 3, and then 4 months for a variety of different reasons. And I was patient. I stayed connected with them. I never really felt like I lost it, though I had to be careful that I was on their timeline, and I had received some information back about the fact that they hadn't made a decision. And I remember the day that I was driving over the Harbour Bridge and in Sydney, and the phone rang. It was the client. I was on the phone to a friend at the time, so I had to bum him off. And it was the client saying, "Thank you very much for your patience, Charlie. We've decided to go with you." And at that stage, it was the biggest deal that I'd ever signed by tenfold. And I just felt this release of relief over me. And when I was reflecting upon that, it was the importance of staying in people's world, but out of their face. Yeah. And I think that's the last one. Stay in people's world, but out of their face. There's a line there somewhere, and it's different for everybody, but it's the business developer or salesperson's role to find where that line is, respect it, respect the buyer, respect their what they're going through, because they're focused on all's what's going in their world, not necessarily on the salesperson's KPIs, be they monthly, quarterly, or annually. So that's the third tip: is stay in people's world, but not in their face.